Hello, everyone. Welcome to Future View on AI and Data podcast. I'm Obi, your host. Each episode, we try to bring experts, stories, ideas, practical steps for citizens, leaders, and global partners to help in this AI era. And our guest today is Taiwo Ademola. Taiwo, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Can you please give us a brief introduction of your background and what you're doing with AI?
Sure. Just first of all, thank you, Obi, for bringing me on for this episode. It's a great honor. I hope we can have some really interesting conversations. So, by way of introduction, my name is Taiwo Ademola. I'm the founder of a tech for good startup called Streetlights Technologies Limited. We're currently using the AI platform Lovable to build out our community platform called Hyperlocal, which we hope to have out in pilot soon. And my background is in biomedical science and law. I've had some time in startups, so I've worked in global operations. And yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Yeah, I look forward to. Let's dig in. Anyway, let's dig in. So I'll start with asking what do you think is the most significant opportunities you see for AI adoption in Africa, key sectors like agriculture or healthcare or education, and what are the unique challenges uh, the continent may face in realizing these opportunities?
Sure. I'd probably have to go with education. I think
Yeah.
I think artificial intelligence has the ability now to democratize that. Because I mean, I can speak to some extent, but especially within Africa, education, by all intents and purposes, isn't free like it is in the West. And most times than not, people have to pay tuition fees to go to school. So having that ability to use artificial intelligence to meet kids and to meet anybody at any level of education where they're at now
Mm,
presents an opportunity to make bespoke education democratized for those individuals and actually means that now countries have the ability to upskill their public to a level that actually now they can really engage competently within the workforce and actually have an economic stake in
mm,
their country's development, which in turn is really good for democracy and things of that nature within countries in Africa. I would have to say that I think the biggest challenge, and I think it's a challenge that most countries, whether in the West or the South, are facing, is that artificial intelligence uses a lot of energy and
mm,
uses a lot of water. And in Africa, having a really strong electrical supply chain, especially in national power grids, is always been a bone of contention for African countries. So, in order to have that, you've got to have those things in place that are really secure. And on top of that, I think even really on the technological front, you've also got to have the necessary technology
mm.
democratized in order for people to access artificial intelligence in the most beneficial way for countries in Africa.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hear you. I hear you so much. It's the key for me, meeting people where they are. The people when you talk to some people, they say things are happening in Africa everywhere. But it's just 1%. I call them 1% or even less than 1% of a cohort, in a concentrated area, maybe Abuja and Lagos. What of the 99% of others that are way behind in education? Then when you come to technology, it's quite huge. I like your take on that, and I hope we'll start looking at that deeper and deeper. And my next question is, how can I know you said you started you're founder of an organization. How can African businesses or startups efficiently leverage both human talent and AI tools to drive productivity and innovation rather than just relying solely on automation?
That's a really good question. And again, I think this is a question I think in different stages, the West and the global South are really tussling with because I think it, going back to sort of a conversation we were talking about earlier on about African businesses. I think there needs to be a lot of. I think the government needs to be really involved on the policy front, because I
Mm,
think my biggest concern is, despite the fact I think in large the job opportunities may not be there yet, I think we need to be really clear on what we want to see AI do in our countries that we believe AI is better placed to do, as
mm,
opposed to bringing in human talent. Because I think the balance is here, where do we have AI as an additional element that a human can use? And where do we have AI as the overhaul to actually help the overall productivity of the company without taking away that economic stake that humans can have in the company, in their
mm.
economy, and also their own ability to progress within society and make something of themselves? So I think we're reaching a point where I think governments need to be much more intentional about what they want to see artificial intelligence do, and to have a much more well-rounded conversation with businesses to really understand where they need it, and from a country standpoint where they want to see humans enter the workforce. Because what we don't want is effectively a displacement of workers at the
Mhm.
bottom who don't have any entry level jobs because artificial intelligence has filled that mark. So there's got to be a bit of a trade off between, I think, the sort of free market conversation and then the other part of, okay, how do we help our society grow? How do
Yeah,
we get it moving? How do we keep democracy within that without, tussling with AI in the middle?
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. I think I hear you what you're saying, but I think it has to do with reskilling. Because people we talk about AI and everybody jumps at the tool, but the right question is, what can AI do for you? Not what every tool, you want to jump into every tool that comes with it. Um, so do you think that people will need to reskill, or how do we make sure human beings are still in use in the era of AI?
I think we definitely do need to reskill, and I think we need to have education that's better adept in facilitating reskilling. But I think it's also important to ensure that countries are in the conversation for reskilling, to ensure that at the basal level that most members of the public have the foundational skills, because it's
Mm.
very difficult to reskill people that don't have the foundations. And I think that's the other piece of that. So I think there definitely does go hand in hand there.
So like national AI literacy program. I run a
Abs-
program
ab-
called data literacy program, which starts at the bare minimum of Excel for people that
yeah,
doesn't use data or tech people. So I can hear what you're saying, just bringing it down. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. Because I mean, in China, there was a lot of talk in China that actually, I think, I think ages 6 to 7, they're now bringing artificial intelligence and they've integrated that into their syllabus. So as they get
Mm.
older, artificial intelligence isn't foreign; it's a friend, right? And it
Yeah.
becomes an everyday part of education, so that when they go out into the workforce, they're already prepared to meet the challenges of tomorrow, because the
Mm.
government has done the hard work and implemented that into their school curriculum. So I think, culminated with the upskilling piece, I think it's really incumbent on governments to start to
Mm.
implement that at a much earlier age and give,
Yeah.
the future the best opportunity to get after it, and give those kids the opportunity to really get to grips with artificial intelligence at the earliest point.
Thank you so much. I think you're just hitting the hammer on the nail for me, because when we talk about AI literacy, AI training, people jump into the deep technical aspect of it. But for me, I think learning how to prompt it the right way is a reskilling. Learning how to use it, what to use at what point, and that comes to the fact that you say that the basics, coming down to the basics to train people. You can't reskill people that doesn't even know that AI exists, or doesn't even have not used it before, doesn't care what it does. So that awareness is key. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And that brings me to our next question, and it's vibe coding.
Mm.
The trend suggests that anyone can now build apps, digital solution using AI with a minimal coding or no coding knowledge at all. So, what implication does this democratization of technology for Africa, digital transformation, and youth employment? What do you think is how does it affect Africa?
It's a really good question. So, my company at Streetlights Technology, we are vibe coding our community platform using Lovable, a Swedish company. Really great tool. And I think to that point, it really does open up the the possibilities of technology and entrepreneurialism, right? It really brings it to the doorstep and allows people to make their wildest dreams possible.
Mm,
And I think because of the playfulness of vibe coding, effectively using natural language to code, it's removed that really deep tech barrier that used to be really at the forefront of
yeah.
coding and getting people involved in technology. So I think it's become much more of a social piece, and it's become
Mm,
less of this really hard technical piece that only a selected view could really get involved in. And I think on the, I think your point was, what was it? In terms of the democratization of that and what that means for employment, I think it's now really opened up the doors that really the the barrier is not really about whether you have the technical skills. The barrier really is are you willing to try it? Are you really
yeah.
willing to learn as you go along? And it's really now becomes this really big experiment. So really the future I think is really bright, but I think culminated with the access to these types of tools, I think to really be in a position for youth to be employed, I think the market really needs to open up for that concept, even if it means, I don't know, having, even if it means having, I don't know, incubators for those that have much more of an entrepreneurial mindset, and to give
Yeah.
them that access to people in business or those that have funding, I think is really, really important. And I think on the sort of youth employment piece, I think we just have to see how things start to unfold within the world of business and see where vibe coding starts to fit into that makeup. Because I think now, I think even for me, I think it's the case of figuring out where does vibe coding fit in with hard coding,
Mm,
where do the lines meet? Because my experience has been of vibe coding, even though I may not understand all the coding. I did a small course in Python just to try
mm,
and ensure that I could understand some familiar concepts. Because sometimes, unless you're not using something like Lovable anyway, sometimes code breaks. And sometimes you have problems and you're trying to make sense of them. And sometimes you've got to modulate your prompts to get a different effect. But if you use the same
mm.
one, it's going to try the same problem to solve that. So I think there's certainly some pieces, I think, between the business world and employability. It's something that does need to be worked out.
Yeah. I get you. I also think, well, so one of the our initiative in AI for Africa is what you're just saying, upscaling, rescaling people, training, but most importantly, meeting them where they are, and then finding do some skill scanning, know who is who, what do they want to do, how do they, are they best fitted for the future? Are they into career or into business?
Mm,
Startups, all this vibe coding and everything. Can they take it further? Are they ready? What is their mindset? And are we able to change their mindset to do what's right for them in the way maybe when they are reluctant to do that. So we have initiative that we do as a venture studio. So a kind of venture studio under the same program, and we have career path. So if you come up and you're inclined to run a business, there will be mentorship, there will be all everything that you need, the ecosystem that you need to flourish, and maybe at the end of the day, find you angel investors or some people to bring in money to what you're doing. Depending on what you're going. The same thing goes with the people that like to want to work and add to workplace, people that already develop their businesses in that. So give them the tools they need to learn to fit into workplace, and then being able to connect them to the global tech giants or small businesses wherever they are. Because for me, what technology is now making it possible for people to work anywhere. You don't have to travel to get a good job. So it's about upskilling and getting them that mentorship and support they need to be able to level up with any person, any place in the world. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think the key piece is ecosystem. I think it's
Yeah,
so important because I think outside of technology, then it's really that belief piece. How far can I take this technology? How far can I take this in my career? And seeing where that really does slot in. I think that's really, really important. And I'm really interested to see where the technology goes because I think even now with vibe coding as it is, I'm really interested to see with all these new programs that are coming out, how that can slot into, the everyday workforce. How can vibe coders work alongside traditional legacy coders as they may start to become?
mhm,
Because obviously, if you know how to code from the outright, you'll always have the overarching advantage. But now it's
yeah,
democratized, the field is open. So it's really understanding what does this new world look like, and what does that look like in business. So I think it's really exciting. I think businesses definitely need to be open-minded to taking on talent, but I think creating the ecosystem to give business the confidence to take on these really bright individuals is going to be pivotal.
yeah. Thank you. That's great. Something just came to mind when you were speaking about the people paying for tuition and all that before they go to school in Africa, and how AI can help, may possibly make it cheaper or easier for
Mm,
them to access. Um, Another aspect I was thinking is the infrastructure as well. AI, like you mentioned, water uses water and lots of power, and power is not in abundance in Africa. What what do you think the government will do, or I don't know, individuals will do, or private sector will do to improve that infrastructure? Because right now, it's sad to say that cloud computing in Africa, 80% of it is for foreigners, people from the West that owns the cloud computing, that which may lead to all kinds of data, call it digital colonization again, and we don't
mm,
want that to happen.
yeah.
What's your take on that?
Um, well, I think, funny enough, I think artificial intelligence in its own right will drive the energy revolution that we need as far as renewable energy. And I think Africa, given it's the continent that virtually gets the most sunlight out of probably any other place in the world, I think this is the opportunity to really shift towards renewable energy, more accessible types of energy, more solar energy, more hydro electricity, those types of things to run and build these data centers and probably really start getting involved in the industrial side of things. Naturally, that will take infrastructural development. And I know that a lot of countries in Africa work alongside with Russia and China. So perhaps I think probably the think piece there might have to be that governments need to be not only concerned with building the technology, but also the training piece to ensure that they actually have engineers and people
Mm,
within their own countries to further facilitate that. Because if they have that knowledge component down, that's where the innovation comes from. And from
yeah,
that, now you can start building your own data centers, right? And connecting your own power lines to that. And actually, all of a sudden, Africa is in a position to be a bit of a player in artificial intelligence in the long run. So I think there's definitely some pieces there that I think needs a bit of government intervention to put business and AI in the right, you know, ecosystem to win.
Great. Thank you so much. And in closing out, what will you say to a young adult? It's one thing to want to help them, to want to train, retrain, or bring all this information, but it's another thing for them to, be ready, the mindset and the environment. What will you say to a young adult in Africa today that will, be listening to this podcast in preparation for what AI is bringing and how they take it on?
I think the encouraging part is we're at a point with technology where you no longer need these big, bulky computers or, things to build. The building part is now in your hands. It's as far as what you want in your mind being developed by you. Uh, Technology has been put in such a place now that so much as your language can now bring to life these new technological developments. And we're in a place now where the power literally is in your hands from something as small as your mobile phone or a laptop. So I'd say don't feel limited by your circumstances and just know that the possibilities of what you dream and your ambitions are limitless. And you only need the smallest thing to really get going.
Thank you. Thank you. And lastly, what are the most actionable tips you could offer African stakeholders, be they policymakers, entrepreneurs, or educators, to maximize the benefits of AI
Yeah.
while looking at or addressing the ethical and the impact, all these infrastructural concerns?
Yeah. I think for businesses, um, get your infrastructures affairs in order, because it's one thing to say that businesses need AI. It's another thing to know what you need to affect in your business to know where it's most efficient. As we've seen this before, so many businesses say, oh, AI is here. Okay, we need AI in our business. Okay, but where do you need it? So really sitting down and thinking about where it could play the best role in your business is the best thing to do so that AI
Yeah.
works most efficiently. And I think for policymakers, I think we need to get really curious about how we get our economy productive. How can we, you know, get the youngsters involved in having an economic stake in their countries to see it not only develop but also to see money in their own pocket? How can we as a country have better control of our destiny, and
Mm.
who are the key players as far as stakeholders, external stakeholders that can help us build the infrastructure we need to scale artificial intelligence in our country and be a major player, but also what do we need to do to ensure that we now start to democratize the knowledge we get from those stakeholders so that we can independently play a role in artificial intelligence outside of that. So I think those are some of the nuggets I would leave some of the policymakers.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Taiwo, so much for joining us. It's been amazing speaking to you, but we're out of time now. Um, and to our listener, thank you for tuning to Future Review podcast. And if today's dive into AI and emerging technology spark any thoughts, please share with us. We are always eager to hear how these ideas land in the boardroom, ministries, classrooms, or even in living rooms across Africa and beyond. Once again, thank you for joining, and we'll do it again. Thank you, Taiwo, and bye.